Good morning. I want to welcome everyone to our actually fifth out of the box episode. I didn't know whether we'd get back, we'd get through one or two, but we're actually on our number five. So I think that's actually a success that we've gone to number five of out of the box. And I hope everyone is getting the information that they need. And remember, we actually started with anxiety and depression, and I think we got some good feedback from that. Then we went into detoxification, again, got some feedback from that. And the last 3 weeks we've been doing weight loss. And again, weight loss is not about calories in and calories out. It's about hormones. And we started with insulin and we started with cortisol. We're going to do another different, a couple different hormones today called leptin and ghrelin. And you're going to be surprised at just how much control they have over your weight loss also. So hopefully you're getting a lot out of this. And again, I welcome all the feedback that you can give me. Again, we've gotten some very good feedback in terms of shortening the length of the programs and some of the information that we're doing. So it's a work in progress. I totally realize that. I am not the Larry King of talk shows, but we're getting in better and better. But I think the information is actually valuable. We've gotten some really good feedback on the information. But again, we're talking about obesity, and we know that, as we've talked about before, obesity today is not about calories in and calories out. It's about hormones, and we've talked about insulin. Remember, insulin is the hormone produced by the pancreas that actually takes sugar and wants to get it into the blood cells to be converted as energy, but because of a lot of different things, insulin resistance being number one, we don't get the insulin, the blood sugar into the cells, and what insulin does is actually promotes the blood glucose to be turned into fat. So insulin is one of the hormones we have to control. Then we went into cortisol, which is the stress hormone. And under stress, under particular types of stress, your body thinks it actually has a fight or flight. So your body thinks it's in this engagement of a fight. So what cortisol does, it takes a lot of sugar out of your glycogen stores in your muscle, in your liver, and dumps it into the bloodstream because it thinks it's going to fight, right? It thinks it's going to have to do either fight or flight. But the problem is that doesn't happen. So we have all this glucose in our body. And so what cortisol does, it says, hey, we don't need all this energy. We didn't have a fight. We didn't have a flight. So really, we didn't do anything. So what cortisol does is takes the blood sugar, and again, stores it as fat. And most of it's stored as fat in the fatty liver. And that's where we get, in the fat in the liver. And that's where we get fatty liver. So there's a lot of different hormones that are controlling weight loss. And again, it's just not about calories in and calories out anymore. Today, we're actually going to talk about a couple different hormones called leptin. And we're going to start with that first. And we're going to actually then go into another hormone called ghrelin. And we'll get more and more into this as we go. So as we go through the slide presentation, and we've actually gotten a pretty good response from the slide presentation. Like I always say, you don't have to sit here and listen to my ugly face or look at my ugly face for the 45 minutes. So we actually kind of get some graphics in here. So I like graphics. I'm very visual. I guess I'm a guy, so I like things to be very, very graphical. And we went over this last time. And again, just very, very briefly, since this is repetitive, we went over this. So if you look at the top 3 causes of death in the U.S., we look at 65 to 66% of the deaths in the U.S., which are heart disease, cancer, and cerebrovascular or stroke, are lifestyle related. So we can control that by nutrition, we can control that by environmental toxins, and we control that by lifestyle. So we have control over almost 66% of the deaths in the U.S. And a lot of this is caused with obesity. So obesity that definitely tends to have a large impact on the cause of deaths in this country. Not only the cause of death, which is mortality, but the morbidity aspect of it. And morbidity is basically how sick you get. So basically, when you age, you want to obviously extend your mortality. You want to live as long as you can, but you want to minimize your morbidity, which is how sick you get. So you don't want to be living at 70 years old but have a high morbidity. So at 70 years old, you're sick, you can't walk, you have all these illnesses that are going on. So you want to separate the two. So this is one of the things that we're trying to do, is actually increase your length of time in terms of being alive, or your mortality rate, and we want to minimize your morbidity rate. And it's time to start now. You don't want to start when you're 60s or 70s. You want to start when you're young, to start looking at these things that you can do to actually lose weight, increase muscle tissue, decrease inflammation, things like that. So with that being said, again, we're going to go into a couple different things here. And again, we talked about this last week. What are the reasons for complicated weight loss? Now, everyone knows that our environment is toxic, and toxins are fat soluble. So the fat soluble toxins are going to hide in our fat cells. That's just what the body does. It doesn't know what to do with them, so it hides it in our adipose tissue. And so the more toxins we have, the larger our fat adipose tissue is going to get. Now, people have to realize that basically we don't produce more fat cells as we get fat. Our fat cells just are like a balloon. They just expand, all right? So we're not producing more fat cells. We're just expanding the fat cells that we actually have. So the more fat you take into your body, the fat cells increase and increase and increase. And we're going to talk about this a little bit, that when fat cells increase, they start to leak. And when fat cells start to leak, they push out fatty acids, they push out toxins, and now your immune system gets involved to try to fight the toxins and the different things that are coming out of the fat cells. That creates inflammation, and as we know, inflammation is one of the more challenging things in our body to overcome weight loss. So inflammation is one of the biggest things in terms of not being able to lose weight. So when we talk about inflammation and the fat cells is growing and growing and growing, what happens is the fat cells grow and they start to leak, and they start leaking fatty acids, they start leaking toxins, and then what happens is that you get inflammation, you get immune response, and that causes issues with weight loss also. So one of the things we're going to start looking at is actually GI dysfunction. We're going to actually see a little bit of a video on this afterwards, that how gastrointestinal problems, especially the intestines, there's many conditions in the intestinal tract that can actually cause problems. One of them is dysbiosis, dys meaning altered, bio meaning life, so we have an altered life form in our intestinal tract. That's called, again, dysbiosis. If you have a very high number of bad bacteria and a very low number of good bacteria, you're going to have a condition called dysbiosis, and that alone can start causing weight problem issues just by having a condition called dysbiosis, which is an altered form of life, too much bad bacteria, not enough good bacteria. That's something we have to address also. So intestinal malfunction, colitis, Crohn's disease, IBS, leaky gut, intestinal permeability, all can cause issues from the intestinal tract why you can't lose weight. We're going to look at thyroid disorders, and a lot of people go to the doctors and they think, oh, my thyroid is fine. Well, we're going to talk about a pathway called your hypothalamic pituitary thyroid pathway, and they all kind of dominate one another. So when your hypothyroid is not working well, or your hypothalamus is not working well, it's going to affect your pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is going to affect your thyroid gland, and then that's going to have problems in terms of losing weight. So we're going to talk about some of the different things that actually affect your hypothalamus. So these are going to be things that we're going to talk about in the future. But when your hypothalamus doesn't work that right, or it's just going to cause a lot more problems. The other thing is nutritional deficiencies. Are you getting your macronutrients in? Are you getting your micronutrients in? Are you getting your proteins, the right type of carbs, the right types of fats? Can all have an effect on not losing weight also. So the other thing obviously is caloric expenditure in terms of caloric intake. Now there still is a solid reason that if you eat too much, or your caloric intake is more than what it should be, and your caloric expenditure is not what it should be, you're going to gain weight, obviously. So there is a little bit of accuracy to calories in versus calories out. So that's still not something that we don't look at, but it's kind of become at the bottom of the list. We look at hormones now in terms of weight loss and some other things. And so what we look at is mainly hormonal issues in terms of looking at hormones in terms of how it relates to weight loss. And the one thing that we also look at in terms of hormone imbalances is inflammation. All right. Inflammation, and I don't mean a little redness on the skin. I mean very, very specific inflammatory markers in the body, cytokinins, prostaglandins, C-reactive protein, which actually damage cells. They damage cell walls. We're going to talk about how it damages, cellular membranes and leads to resistance. So there's a lot of different things that inflammation causes. And again, we're not talking about little redness on the skin. So this is a little bit of a recap of what we did. Now, we're going to get into a hormone that it's new. We haven't talked about this yet. And the hormone is called leptin. Okay? So basically, leptin is produced in your adipose tissue. Your fat tissue, your adipose tissue produces leptin. So when leptin is a little bit similar to insulin resistance. If you remember insulin resistance, that we had a lot of glucose in the body, and so the insulin needed to be made from the pancreas, but the pancreas now is making all this insulin, and the insulin is going up on the cell wall saying, hey, knock, 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 we have this blood glucose out here. We want to get the blood glucose into the cell walls to actually be used as energy through the mitochondria. But the cells have been so damaged through toxins in our body, through inflammation, through free radicals, that our cellular membranes are just a mess. They're not working properly. So the receptors on the cell membrane just don't recognize the insulin. And so what happens is that the cell walls become resistant to the insulin going in, so the blood sugar doesn't go in, so the blood sugar keeps on going higher and higher and higher, and so the insulin keeps on going higher and higher and higher, and then you have a problem called insulin resistance, is that the cell wall has become resistant to the insulin getting in, blood sugar goes up, and then what happens, you can't obviously have all this blood sugar in your body, so basically the insulin turns the blood sugar into fat. All these different things back in the 70s and 80s that told us about low fat diets and things like that. Well, all they did is add sugar to them, and sugar basically gets in there, and sugar very easily can be converted into fat in the liver. So you can cut down on the fat as much as you want, but you're not doing anything to minimize the fat storage in your body, because glucose will be turned right into fat if you're insulin resistant. So. And we're going to talk about a little bit about leptin resistance, which is the same thing. So leptin is what's called leptin wants to actually go into what's called maintain homeostasis. Okay, so your body wants to maintain balance. All right, so there's a lot of the Chinese call it yin and yang. And the balance within the body just wants to be balanced out, and that's what leptin does. Leptin says, hey, we've had enough to eat. We can shut down the hunger, and then we can shut down the resting energy expenditure because we've had enough to eat. We don't have to burn any more calories. So what leptin does is tries to keep the body into homeostasis. And again, that's just balance, and that's one of the things that actually leptin does. So basically, increase in body mass will actually increase energy expenditure. Now that makes sense, right? If you're getting fat, you're increasing your body mass. You're increasing your total energy expenditure, because the more body mass you have, you want to actually start getting rid of some of the calories, and so your energy expenditure actually goes up. And the energy expenditure is basically based on your REE, your resting energy expenditure, or your BMR, your basal metabolic rate. So if you did not get out of bed for 24 hours, your body is still producing energy. And so you have to actually compensate for that. So if you're in a coma for 24 hours, your body is producing all this energy. And when your body mass actually goes up, you don't need to have all this energy expenditure, so it actually ends up going down. So leptin has a lot of different roles in turning homeostasis and balance within the body. So the problem is that the body has a set point. All right, so it's different for everybody. So when the when you have a set point within your body, the body has like I said a set point, and it wants to kind of maintain that weight. So, and it's different for everybody. So when actually you try to lose weight, and your body says, okay, I'm actually losing weight, the body tries to fight that because it's a prehistoric, it's been around for many thousands of years. You don't know when your next meal is going to come from. So as you start losing weight, your body actually starts to calm down, your metabolic rate comes down. So there's a lot of different things because your body wants to maintain homeostasis and it wants to maintain a set point, and it doesn't want to lose weight. So as you're losing weight, the body is fighting you on that. And there's many reasons why your body is fighting on that. One is a defense mechanism to actually maintain weight. So all these people who go on these crash diets and they're losing all this weight, the body says, hey, you know what, I'm going into starvation mode, and so we need to actually kind of maintain body weight. So the body fights that, and so it actually starts to increase your weight because it doesn't want you to go into starvation. So everyone has these set points, and people come to my office all the time and they'll lose a little weight and they say they plateau. Well, that's what the body's doing. It's plateauing because I think it's going into starvation, and so it doesn't want the body to lose any more weight, so it kind of plateaus. And that's kind of a leptin issue also, which we'll talk about a little more in the future also. Now, what leptin does with this, and what leptin does, is basically it's produced in the adipose tissue. All right, so the more fat you have, the more leptin you produce. And the leptin then actually tells the body, hey, I've had enough. We don't need to eat anymore. So it goes up into the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus then gets the leptin, the leptin signals, and it tells you, hey, we're not hungry because we've had enough to eat. And so it tells the body to stop eating. And if it tells the body to stop eating because we've had enough food, it tells the resting energy expenditure to come down also. So we don't eat as much, we don't burn as much calories, and that's the body going into homeostasis or turning it into a balance. The problem with that is that when that happens is that your body increases food, because what's happening is that the leptin is saying, hey, we've had enough to eat, but have you really had enough to eat? Because there's problems with leptin resistance. So one of the things that happens with leptin resistance is actually the leptin is saying, hey, we've had enough to eat, everything is fine, we're cool here, but the problem is you really haven't. So the body is saying, okay, we actually have to eat more. So there's all these different challenges with leptin when it gets out of sync. So that's one of the issues with leptin. We're going to go into a little bit more. It's a little bit complicated, but the reality is it's a little bit easy too. Very simple. You have a lot of fat tissue. The fat tissue gets fat. Remember, we don't produce more fat cells. The fat cells that we have just expand. As the fat cells expand, we produce more leptin. The leptin gets squeezed out of the fat cells along with toxins and different things. The leptin then goes up to the hypothalamus in the brain, and it tells, hey, we've had enough to eat, we don't need to do anything more. But if there's a condition called leptin resistance, the brain isn't taking into that. So you can have all the leptin you want in your body telling you not to eat, but if the brain isn't recognizing that, then you're going to continue to eat because the brain is irrelevant, okay? It's selective hearing. In my past relationships, I have been very much accused of very selective hearing, and I will admit I have been known to be very selective in my hearing, but that's what the hypothalamus does. It becomes very selective in what it's going to do to the leptin. And so the leptin is in the brain, and it's telling the brain, hey, we've had enough, we don't need to eat, let's kind of shut off all these mechanisms. But the brain isn't hearing it because the brain has been damaged by inflammation, by free radicals, by many different things. So the leptin isn't having a positive effect on the hypothalamus. Leptin also can decrease thyroid hormone. So I get into my office all the time, people talking about that they have thyroid problems. It's either hypothyroid or Hashimoto's or hyperthyroid, and a lot of times there's nothing wrong with the thyroid. It's just that the leptin levels are just not communicating with the brain, and like I said, there's an axis called the HPT axis, which is the hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis. And if the hypothalamus isn't reading the leptin right, it's going to affect the pituitary. The pituitary is going to affect the thyroid, and your thyroid is going to come back normal with all these tests, but that doesn't mean it's working normal. So if we want to go upstream a little bit, instead of just taking the thyroid issue, we can actually go back and see if there's an issue with leptin. And that's what I do all the time, because, again, you don't want to be put on thyroid medication if you don't have to. If we can find something a little upstream, which could be leptin issues, that could be telling the brain, hey, I'm full, but, it could be other things that are going on which are affecting the pituitary and the thyroid. And of course, once you get hypothyroid, then your metabolism starts going down and you start putting on weight, and it actually may not be the thyroid, it could be the leptin that's actually causing the problem. So in a nutshell, so increased leptin increases in inflammation. It increases the leptin in your body, which increases fatty acids, and then the fatty acids actually increases, and then the leptin actually then will go up. But again, if the brain isn't interpreting it right, you will continue to eat, even though the leptin is telling you not to eat. Diet, lifestyle can contribute to leptin issues also. So depending on stress, cortisol, insulin can all affect leptin issues. Exercise can affect leptin issues. So there's many different things that can affect leptin as we go along here. So as we continue here, some of the other things that actually affect leptin issues is lack of sleep, and we're finding out more and more how important leptin or lack of sleep is. We need 8 hours of continual sleep. There's a phase 3 or REM sleep actually produces many types of hormones in our body. One of the main things it produces is growth hormone. And growth hormone, as it relates to sleep, is one of the main hormones that actually repair our body tissue. So growth hormone repairs tissue, it repairs our intestinal tract, it regenerates brain tissue. There's a lot of other things, and if we're not getting 8 hours of sleep at night, we're not producing growth hormone, and that could be one of the problems why people have so many problems in our society, because growth hormone isn't being manufactured in the brain, and it's just not healing the body as we sleep. So 8 hours of sleep is crucial to maintaining homeostasis when it especially comes to leptin and other hormones. So basically, when we eat green sugar, we increase in insulin, which increases leptin, which regulates your appetite and fat storage. So again, insulin has a problem with this also. So when we increase insulin, we increase leptin. Makes sense, right? So if we have an increase in blood sugar, insulin is going to go up, because we can't have all this blood sugar in our bodies. So insulin goes up to try to force that glucose into the cells. But again, if you're insulin resistant, meaning that the receptors on the cells aren't recognizing the insulin. Again, insulin is going up on the door of the cell and going knock, 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 knock. Hey, I have some blood sugar here, and the cell wall, the receptors on the cell wall, is saying, I don't recognize you, and it closes the door, and then sugar doesn't go into the cell. Insulin rises. If insulin rises, it says we have all this blood sugar in our blood. So if we have all this blood sugar in our blood, well, that's kind of telling the body we have enough sugar, right? So we don't need to eat anymore. So that's when leptin goes up to say, hey, we have all this blood sugar, we don't need to eat. So it kind of tells the hypothalamus that we don't need to eat because we have high insulin levels. But the problem with that is that, as we discussed in previous episodes, that the insulin is going to turn that blood sugar right into fat. And so that's not a good thing. So high insulin levels, high sugar levels, because of type 1, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, is going to affect the leptin levels also. So again, it's a domino effect. It's just kind of, one after another. When I have people come into my office, I always say, well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? In all honesty, it doesn't matter, because it's going to be what it's going to be, and we're going to treat everything anyways. And whether the insulin came first or the leptin resistance came first, you're still going to treat everything anyways. So let's go back to here. So causes of insulin and decrease insulin. And I apologize; these slides are moving a bit slow. So if we have lots of leptin, tells the brain that we have plenty of fat stored. So again, that's what leptin does. So when leptin is reduced from the adipose tissue, and that's where it's made from, the fat storage is releasing leptin and saying that, hey, we have enough fat stored while everything is fine. At the other end of the spectrum, while low levels of leptin in the brain, fat stores are depleted. So the leptin is telling the body, hey, we have enough fat, we're in homeostasis, we're in balance, everything is cool, leptin can come down, leptin can go up because we don't want to have, it want to stop the eating centers of the brain. But the opposite could be true, where, if the levels of leptin in the brain, that fat stores are depleted, then the opposite will actually happen. So leptin is definitely controlled by other hormones in the body, and how much we eat and how much sugar we have, but mainly how much fat we have. So basically, we eat, body fat goes up, leptin goes up, and we eat and we eat less, and we burn more calories. Because again, if leptin is going up, it's telling the body we have enough energy, and so we eat less and we burn more calories. And that could be through REE, again, resting energy expenditure. If we didn't go to bed for 24 hours, we're going to be still burning calories. So we don't really need to drop our resting energy expenditure. We need to increase it because we have enough calories. We can burn calories now. So that's giving us a green light that when leptin levels are high and we have enough calories in our fat stores, we can actually exercise. We can burn calories. That's one of the things that actually leptin does. It actually allows us to burn more calories. Second thing, obviously, we don't eat. Body fat goes down because we're not eating. We're depleting our fat stores. Leptin goes down, and we eat more. So if leptin goes down, it's not stimulating the brain to say, hey, stop eating. If leptin goes down, it's stimulating the brain to say, hey, we need to eat more. And that makes sense, right? Because if we're not eating more, we need leptin to go down because we want leptin, we don't want leptin going to the hypothalamus and saying that we need to eat more, we need to actually eat less. So again, it's a little bit complicated, and it works on these positive and negative feedback loops, but it's one of the most important hormones in the body in terms of actually maintaining weight loss. And again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to say this many times. Weight loss or weight gain or obesity is not about calories in, and it's not about calories out. It's about hormones. We've already gone over several hormones, and we're going over leptin now. You can see how complicated it can be. If your homeostasis got out of balance, your balance is out of balance, or your hormones are not working properly, or the target organs that these hormones have an effect on are resistant, or they're hurt, or they're damaged, we're going to have a lot of different problems. Now, so this is just a little bit of an experiment that someone did, and it's about leptin. And so we have these 3 different rats. And you can see these rats, basically, the one on the left is actually normal, all right? They've given it the normal amount of food. It has its leptin gene in there. The food is regulated. They feed it, and it looks the same, right? No weight has been gained. No weight has been lost. It's in homeostasis. It's in balance. Everything is fine. Now, you can see in that middle picture, where we actually have, we can actually pretty much know where every gene is in the body. So what they've done, when you see KO, that means knocked out. So we take these knocked out mice and we actually knock out the gene for leptin. All right, it's gone. We've taken it out of the DNA. So what happens if you don't have the gene in there for leptin to tell us we're full? That the mouse just keeps on eating and eating and eating and eating because it doesn't have the leptin to say that we're full. So you can see the mouse just keeps on eating and eating and eating, and it becomes an obese mouse, obviously. And obviously there's a lot of issues there. The food is the same, everything is the same, except that they've knocked out the gene for leptin, so it doesn't have it, so the mouse continues to feed itself and it becomes obese. Now, the third one, again, they've knocked out that same gene leptin, so it doesn't have the gene leptin, so you would think it would be very, very similar as the second mouse, right? But if you don't have the gene leptin, your body's going to continue to eat and eat and eat and eat. But what they did is that they actually took serum or blood from that first mouse and injected it into the third mouse. So obviously, when you're taking blood from the healthy rat and you're putting it into the second one, you're getting some leptin in there. So when we can see on that third mouse that you've knocked out the gene, the food is the same, but you've taken blood from the first mouse, which has leptin in it, and you put it into the third mouse, and guess what happens? You have a normal mouse because you have now leptin in there. Even though the gene has been knocked out, you're getting the leptin through the blood, and you have a normal scenario. So the first mouse, the third mouse both have leptin, not a problem, they look normal. The second mouse obviously does not have leptin. That gene has been knocked out, and you can see how it becomes obese. So this is a pretty good indication that leptin actually controls how much fat we actually store in our body. So this is a really good scientific experiment to kind of prove that. So now, as our bodies add more fat cells, and this is kind of what we talked about before. So we'll go over this briefly. We do not produce more fat cells. A lot of the time people think when we get fat, we produce more fat cells. No. What we do is that we increase the volume of our fat cells. And they become bigger, and they become bigger, and they become bigger, and they become bigger. And the problem is, just like anything else, when you put too much stress on cell walls, that is going to be some leakage. And so that's what happens. The tissue within the adipose tissue starts getting stretched and stretched and stretched, and so some fatty acids will come out of there, but some of the other parts of the cell within adipose tissue kind of leak out there too, and that will cause an immune response, and that will cause an inflammatory response. And so now we have inflammation going on in there, we have immune responses going on in there, leptin is coming out of that also, but now it's being manipulated by the inflammation and by the immune system, so it doesn't work the way that it should. And especially with the immune system, so now you have these macrophages that are coming up and actually causing more inflammation in the body. So the more fat we eat, the fatter our cells get, the more leakage becomes. The more leakage comes out of the cells. We get more actually fatty acids being released. We get more inflammation being produced. We get more toxicity in the area. The immune system tends to malfunction. Those are all things that affect cellular membrane. So again, everything goes in and out of a cell through a cell membrane. It's called a lipid phospholipid bilayer. Again, 2 layers of fat. And when that happens, what should be coming from outside the cell, going inside the cell, doesn't happen, because the cell wall is actually not working the way that it should. And that's part of the reasons why we have insulin resistance or leptin resistance. Excuse me, because the cell wall is not working properly. Same thing inside the cell. The toxins that are inside the cell should be being able to go outside the cell. But again, that cell wall isn't working properly, so the cell wall keeps the toxins inside the cell, and now you have toxins building up inside the cell. So what we need to do is make sure that these cells are healthy. So what should be getting outside the cell, inside the cell, and from what's inside the cell, outside the cell, should be working properly. And again, inflammation, free radicals, unhealthy adipose tissues. There's many different things that can actually cause these cell walls to not work properly, and again, that leads to the resistance part of it. So there's a lot of different reasons why this can be happening. So kind of finishing up here, kind of a synopsis of what we have talked about. So leptin is floating around the brain, okay? So again, we're producing a lot of leptin because we're resistant, okay? We have enough food in our body, but the leptin is being produced, it's going up into high levels, it's getting up into the hypothalamus, it's crossing the blood-brain barrier, but the hypothalamus doesn't recognize it. And so we have all these high levels of leptin floating around, but the hypothalamus is saying, I don't recognize you, just like the cell with glucose didn't recognize the insulin. It's very similar. So the brain doesn't recognize it. So, and it's the main biological abnormality in human obesity. We need to get leptin working properly. So actually, it works the way that it should, which is telling the brain to stop eating. But guess what? It's not doing that. So we continue to eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. So when the brain doesn't receive the leptin signal, it basically erroneously thinks that the body is starving. And so what do you think? If the body is starving, it's going to eat and eat and eat more, even though we have plenty of food, we have plenty of fat, we have plenty of protein, we have plenty of calories in this. But if the brain isn't getting the signal that we've had enough, it's going to eat and eat and eat, and it thinks it's going into starvation. You're going to eat and eat and eat more. So again, there are different things that we can do to test this. And these are things that at my office we can actually test leptin. We can test a lot of different things. But again, leptin is just one of the more important hormones. Some people think it's the most important hormone, even beyond insulin and cortisol. And in terms of maintaining homeostasis or balance within the body to actually start having a positive effect in terms of weight loss. So when we get to kind of keep on going from here. So let's go back to here. So again, this is just a little bit of a scheme, very, very simple, very much, okay, so very easy. We eat, fat gets stored, fat cells secrete more leptin, because remember, we don't make fat cells, fat cells basically just get fatter. It produces the leptin, it forces the leptin out of the body. Brain sees the leptin, tells it to stop eating. But the problem is when it's resistant, increased leptin is a signal to stop eating. So what should be a feedback loop that tells the brain to stop eating, it gets cut off, and what do? We eat, and it's this vicious cycle. And so leptin resistance just keeps on causing us to eat, even though leptin should be telling the brain and the hypothalamus not to eat. So this is a problem, all right? This is one of the hormones that we need to kind of work with to try to get back into balance. So, when people lose weight with leptin, levels decrease significantly. The brain interprets this as starvation. So people go on these really, really radical, low-fat, low-calorie diets, and they lose fat really, really, really quick. The problem is that the body thinks it's going into starvation. So it's going to cut down on your energy expenditure. It's going to cut down on a lot of different things. So the worst thing you can do is try to lose weight fast, okay? Because you're going to alter your hormones. Your hormones are going to be out of whack. They're not going to know what's going on. Leptin thinks it's losing a lot of this fat really, really quick. It thinks it's going into starvation. It's going to drop, which means that you're going to be eating more, and there's another hormone we're going to talk about in a minute. So losing fat at a weight at a very rapid rate is not healthy for you at all. So again, the body does not want to lose weight. It wants to fight losing weight. And 1,000 years ago, it wasn't that big a deal, but now it is a big deal because so much of this is hormonal related. So the faster you try to lose weight, the less hormonal control you have over your body, whether it's insulin, cortisol, leptin, ghrelin, and some other things that we're going to talk about. And the body's going to think I'm going into starvation, and then it's going to shut everything down, and you're going to have a lot of problems. And it's one of the reasons why people have a lot of problems losing weight. So, excuse me. So this makes the brain change, or the physiology and behavior, in order to regain the fat that the brain thinks that we're missing. So the bottom line is that people who are obese have high levels of leptin. All right, you wouldn't think that, right? You would think people who are obese don't have the high levels of leptin because the leptin should be telling them not to eat. So you think, okay, if I have all this weight, leptin is telling me not to eat. So why do I have all this high leptin in my body? Well, the problem is, again, insulin, the leptin resistance. The hypothalamus is not reading it, and the leptin is getting produced to tell the body not to eat. But people who have obesity, the leptin is saying, you know what, I can't. The hypothalamus is not reading it, so the leptin keeps on going up and up and up and up and up, And so, but the hypothalamus isn't actually reading it, and so you basically keep on producing weight even though your leptin levels are high. You would think it'd be the opposite. You think, okay, I have high fat storage. I don't need to be told not to eat because I have all this fat. But the opposite is actually true. So the studies show that people who actually have are obese have high levels of leptin because you're leptin resistant, and it's not having any effect on the hypothalamus, and it's not having an effect on weight loss. Okay, the brain thinks that we must eat so that we don't starve to death. Again, misconception because of the issues with leptin and the hypothalamus not working the way that it should. The other stuff we don't really have to go through because we've actually kind of talked to this a lot. But basically, for the great majority of people trying to exert cognitive inhibition, willpower over leptin-driven starvation signal is next to impossible. So you can sit there all you want, and you can have all the willpower that you want, and you're going to get up in the morning and you're going to say, I am going to beat this. I am not going to eat. I am not going to have sugar. I am not going to have fat. I am going to be perfect today. I am going to be, the best person I can. I'm going to eat perfectly. But you're going through some pretty strong hormonal signals in your body. And 9 out of 10 times, I don't care how much willpower you have, you're going to lose. That's just the way it is, okay? Unfortunately, hormones in the body out control willpower. Now, there are some exceptions to that rule, but basically when your weight loss or your weight gain is controlled by hormones, you can have all the willpower you want. It's probably just not going to work because your hormones are going to exert far more control over your weight loss and your weight gain than just willpower. So I know that's bad news. That's not what you want to hear. You think it by just fighting through it, and I can do this, and I can give up the weight. I can be strong. You can be as strong as you want, but the hormones are incredibly powerful in our system, and leptin is one of the most powerful. So you can have all the willpower you want. Chances are you're probably not going to make it. So we have to address the hormonal aspect of weight loss. So when we go through some of the things that are going on, this is just a quick little slide to show some of the negative effects of improper effects of leptin. And obviously cardiovascular disease, blood sugar, fatigue, hunger reward system in the brain. We're going to go over that in a minute. Reproductive hormones, estrogen, testosterone, pregnancy, and erectile dysfunction can all be caused by issues with leptin problems. So that's not actually what we're looking at. So what are we doing in terms of to protect? How do we kind of work with the leptin to try to get this under control? Now, number one is avoid bad fats, and by that we mean partially hydrogenated and hydrogenated fats and trans fats. We want to eliminate that from the body. Read your labels. Read things. If something is a partial hydrogenated or hydrogenated fat or a trans fat, get rid of it. All right. You do not want to have it. It's going to throw leptin levels off. It's going to throw a lot of things off. So you want to avoid that. I don't like vegetable oil. I don't like corn oil. I don't like canola oil. There's other vegetable oils that I don't like. I think you need to get rid of all vegetable oils. The two best oils I think you can have are basically olive oil and coconut oil are the best two fats that you can have. Clean saturated fat. We have been sold a bill of goods of how bad saturated fat is for us. But if you get clean saturated fat, that actually will help stimulate leptin and control it a little bit. And I'm not talking about going out and having 12 ounces of meat a night, but good organic clean saturated fat. There's nothing wrong with it. It will actually help maintain leptin levels and decrease leptin resistance in the body. Cholesterol. I think we've been sold a little bit of a bill of goods on cholesterol. Your liver produces 2,300 milligrams of cholesterol a day. Every hormone, every sex hormone, every steroid is made from cholesterol. So when doctors come in and they say, oh, my doctor, I have a cholesterol of 212, and they put me on cholesterol lowering medication, I just go, there's just so many different things that cholesterol produce in our body. So the reduced cholesterol, I don't think it's something that should be done unless it's actually way out of proportion. So cholesterol isn't as bad as we once thought. Like eggs, eggs is something that are coming back now in terms of cholesterol. So I think there's a lot of different misconceptions out there in terms of cholesterol and saturated fat. Obviously, eliminate grains and sugar. That's pretty much standard through all the diets that are out there. We need to eliminate sugar. We need to eliminate processed foods. We need to eliminate, some of the simplified grains, and that'll help also. But we can look at all these different things in the different diets, and they pretty much all say the same thing. And toxins. About one third of all weight loss or weight gain is associated with toxins. So we need to eliminate toxins, good detox, liver detox, intestinal detox, and now cellular detox, which we're going to get into probably in another show. We have to get into the cells. We have to detox on a cellular level, and it's very hard. You cannot go to a store, pick up a pill, and think that you're detoxing. So it's a little bit more complicated than that. Okay, so that is leptin. Okay, again, we talked about detoxing on a cellular level, get rid of the fats and things like that. So we've kind of basically gone through this slide. So we just kind of go to the next slide, and now we're going to talk about ghrelin. Ghrelin is a completely opposite hormone. Ghrelin tells us actually to eat. Ghrelin is produced in your stomach lining, and in your stomach lining, when you get hungry, ghrelin is produced to tell us to actually start eating. And I'm sure everyone has had these growls in your stomach, where you know you're hungry, and that's actually ghrelin telling your body that, hey, we need something to eat. So basically, it's produced in your stomach, and it is a hormone. When you skip a meal, your ghrelin makes you ravenous. So people who skip meals during the course of the day, and they think they're doing themselves good, all they're doing is stimulating more ghrelin in their stomach. So the ghrelin is coming out of the stomach, it's going again to your hypothalamus, and it's telling you we need to eat. So skipping meals during the day, going on these very low calorie diets is only stimulating ghrelin, which is telling your hypothalamus that we need to eat. So you should not skip meals. You should eat balanced meals during the course of the day. Of course, the right type of calories, the right type of foods, things like that. Ghrelin is considered the hunger hormone. Okay, that's what tells us that we need to eat, that we are actually hungry. All right. So basically, in terms of, if you find yourself fighting cravings during the course of the day, that's usually that your ghrelin is out of balance. So when you start craving foods, you pretty much know that your ghrelin is out of balance, and that's being produced by the stomach lining to tell us we need food. We need, whether it's fats, carbohydrates, sugars, whatever. So ghrelin is basically telling the body that we need to eat. So basically, ghrelin appears to be suppressing fat utilization in fat cells. So basically, that makes sense, right? So if ghrelin is telling you to eat, the last thing it wants to do is actually, bring fat out. So it suppresses, the fat utilization. So it doesn't want to use fat as fat, but basically what it wants to do is kind of stimulate appetite, but it wants to stimulate appetite in different ways. So ghrelin is actually an important hormone, but again, it works differently than leptin. Again, leptin tells you you've had enough, so lower your REE. Ghrelin is saying the exact opposite. Ghrelin is telling you, hey, I'm hungry. We need to eat. We need to get carbohydrates in here for the fast food. You start getting cravings. So it's a little bit different than working with leptin. Now, one of the things that can affect ghrelin levels are many things, especially in the intestinal tract. You could have not enough hydrochloric acid in your stomach. You could have not enough digestive enzymes in your pancreas. You could have a condition called dysbiosis, which is basically dysbiosis is a condition mean altered life. Altered bios life. And so if you have that going on in there, it's going to affect your ghrelin levels. Colitis, Crohn's, irritable bowel, all can affect your ghrelin levels also. So there's many different types of intestinal issues that can have an effect on ghrelin, which actually will stimulate ghrelin and tells you that you need to eat when you really don't need to eat. So what we want to do is ghrelin is presumably a function of appetite, so it's a stimulatory signal, okay? And also ghrelin seems to be involved in the regulation of food intake and energy balance. Ghrelin signals the hypothalamus. Again, everything goes back to the hypothalamus. You know, the hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid, adrenal axis. Ghrelin is actually correlated with gastric emptying. So the more empty your stomach is getting, the more ghrelin you're going to produce. This is why you don't want to skip meals. This is why you don't want to starve, because you're going to produce a lot more ghrelin. And as you get hungrier and hungrier, your ghrelin levels are going to go up and up, and you're going to get cravings, and you're going to start eating. Again, hormones are far more powerful than willpower. So you have to eat. You have to eat correctly, or your ghrelin is going to tell you to eat, and you're going to actually lose the battle. So what we want to do here is show you a very, very healthy intestinal tract. You can see the microvilli at the top, and the small molecules are getting through. Those are, micronutrients, and they're crossing over the blood barrier in the intestinal tract. You can see the large molecules, which are probably large portions, fats, bacteria, things like that, go through, and they come out through your stool. So the parts of the food that should be getting through the intestines is actually getting through the intestines, which is what you want to do. And 80% of your immune system is in and around your intestinal tract, so that's what you want. You want good, healthy, clean micronutrients going into your immune system, and so you don't have any issues with allergies and things like that. And the things you don't want going into your immune system or crossing that barrier, you want brought out through the intestinal tract. And that was just a little animation to show how it should work. Unfortunately, this animation, you can see how the microvilli are sick and the gap junctions are open, and you're getting a little bit of good nutrients coming through them. We can see those large molecules, which should not be going through, are actually entering into the bloodstream, affecting the immune system, affecting inflammation, and this is a problem. This is called dysbiosis. Again, altered life. And so again, this something as simple as this called dysbiosis can actually affect your ghrelin levels. This is why with ghrelin we have to start at many different levels. We can start in the stomach. We can start at digestive enzymes. We can start at your intestinal tract, at dysbiosis and all the different things that we just talked about. So in order for your ghrelin to work properly, you need to have a healthy, clean digestive tract. And this is something we do at my office. We put people on a liver and an intestinal detox, and we put people on a very, very specific cellular detox. But if you don't get the intestines cleaned out, your ghrelin levels are just not going to work properly, and you're going to stimulate all this appetite, because the ghrelin is saying, feed me, I'm hungry. So that's what you don't want. So you have to clean out the intestinal tract and get it working properly. You can see by basically those last two animations, it wasn't working that properly as it should. So a very, very simple diagram here. Empty stomach obviously secretes more ghrelin because it's empty, and then it basically activates the hunger neurons, and then it deactivates the satiety neurons, which means that you're full. So it's telling you that if it's activating the hunger hormones, it's telling you that you're hungry, and it's deactivating the satiety neurons, saying that you're full. So ghrelin does both. Now, when you're full, it secretes less ghrelin, because obviously you're full, your stomach is full. You don't need to secrete the ghrelin from your stomach, so obviously it's saying, hey, we don't need to eat, we're full, everything is cool. So this is a little simplistic diagram to show you how that works. So ghrelin potentially stimulates secretion of growth hormone. Now that's important, because in phase, I think we talked about, in phase 3 of REM sleep, growth hormone is produced, and this is what regenerates good, clean, healthy tissue in your body. And if you're not getting into phase 3 sleep, you're not producing growth hormone, and all these different hormones in your body are not being repaired, and all this tissue is not being repaired. So you need to get into good phase 3 sleep. You need to get into REM sleep to produce growth hormone, which has an effect on many other types of hormones. So ghrelin concentration is reduced in obese humans compared to lean control subjects, which again, kind of makes sense, right? So if you're obese, you actually want to have a hormone that's telling you to eat. But the problem is it's the reverse again, because it's resistance. So as the more obese you get, your body is telling you, hey, we don't need to eat because we have all this food in us. So it's downregulating the ghrelin. They're telling you that, hey, you know what? You don't need to eat. We have enough fat. We have enough storage. So the ghrelin can actually come on down. So ghrelin resistance is likely a period over overeating and an increase in circulating high leptin levels. So ghrelin can actually be increased by just high levels of eating. And so the more we eat, the higher our ghrelin level is, and then the more we eat, we eat a lot, ghrelin levels go up, we eat more, ghrelin level goes up. And again, this isn't even going back to the leptin issue, which is telling us, it's resistant, which is telling us, basically should be telling us not to eat, but it's actually telling us to eat. So the ghrelin and the leptin levels are playing off of one another. And that's, again, you can try to, lose weight all you want, it's just probably not going to happen. Again, just a really simple schematic here. We started number 1, ghrelin levels rise, hunger increases, so the desire for high carbs increase, digestion speeds up, causing calories to be absorbed faster, and then the gut ghrelin is released faster, and then released faster. Obviously, then you want to eat more and more and more, because ghrelin is telling you to eat more and more and more and more. So again, it's this kind of feedback mechanism that just keeps on going around and around and around and around. And I'm going to say this again, it's not about calories in, calories out, it's about hormones. And I think we've covered a lot of hormones now that show that they're extremely powerful. And again, we won't go back to the ones that we talked about a couple weeks ago, but we'll talk about the leptin ghrelin that we talked about today. Again, you can sit back and think that you have control over all of these, your willpower, but it's just not going to work. Okay, so plasma ghrelin levels are enhanced on the condition of physiological stress, and now this has something to do with the reward system. So once we get under stress, we have a part of our brain that gets rewarded, and we all know that when we're under stress, we tend to eat more, we tend to eat a lot more, and we tend to eat a lot more of the bad foods. And the problem is because this reward center in our brain is getting stimulated, and so ghrelin has a big part to do with that. It's telling us that we need to eat, and that food, and usually carbohydrates or simple sugars, go to the reward system. The reward system gets stimulated, and it feels good. It's pleasurable, and it says, hey, I want more and more and more of this. So under stress or under other certain conditions in the body, ghrelin will stimulate the reward system, and the reward system is saying, I really like what's going on. And again, you can try all the willpower you want to try to not have that actually go to the reward system, and it's almost impossible. Once your reward system gets stimulated, it wants more reward, more reward, more reward, and ghrelin has a big part in doing that. So again, controlling ghrelin, controlling a lot of different things within the body. In terms of the reward center, you don't want to keep rewarding the reward center, because it's going to want more and more and more. It's going to keep wanting higher levels and higher levels and higher levels to try to get that same sensation of reward. So again, getting ghrelin, getting the leptin under control will minimize the reward center, And once we get that under control, it's a whole lot better situation. Okay, so the reward center is a very, very powerful part of our body. Again, you can sit there and try to beat it. It's probably not going to work. So the more we can get ghrelin and leptin under control, get that reward center out of it, and so hopefully other aspects of reward will come into play as you see your body changing, as you see things start to develop, as you become healthier, disease starts to minimize. That should be your reward system, not this part of the brain that's feeding off of carbohydrates and sugars and different things like that. So okay. So basically, there's a thing called leptin diet. I'm not real thrilled with the leptin diet. At the end of this, we're going to put together all the different diets, and we're going to kind of come back with the most common areas of the diet. But basically, a ghrelin diet basically says that you do not want to eat after your last meal in the evening. Okay, so let's just say your last meal is in the evening at 7. You do not want to go over that. All right, so at 7 o'clock you're done, and you don't eat until you get up in the morning. And there's a reason for that, because as you're putting more and more food into the body at night, that food is being converted into different carbohydrates, different fats, which is stimulating ghrelin. And ghrelin is just, again, doing what it's doing, is saying, hey, we need to eat more. So you're actually eating more, and you think, oh, I'm not eating at night. Of course you're eating at night. You're taking the food from the liver. You're taking the food from other places. So you're not starving at night. You're actually getting food at night. It's just not coming from the refrigerator. So one of the big things in terms of a ghrelin diet is just don't eat after your last meal in the evening. Eat 3 really good meals a day. That's kind of self-explanatory. You've heard that many times before. Don't make them large meals. Don't make them 800 to 1,000 calories. Keep them very, very reasonable. One of the things that's important is in the first half hour after waking, you want a good protein meal. That's whether that's an egg, whether that's almond butter, whatever it is. You want to have a good protein meal within a half hour of waking. And of course, as everything else, you want to decrease your sugar, your carbohydrates, things like that. And that's going to be common through all the different diets that we're going to go over. And next week, we're going to kind of put all that together for you. So, again, kind of threw a lot at you. We went obviously over an hour, so we're going to split this up into two different sections. Episode 5, Part 1, and Part 2. Again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact my email, which is drdoneric@gmail.com, or my website, which is Dr. Don Harris, www.drdon Harris. Call my office, 334-333-3000. We put these on Facebook and on YouTube. Anything that you can do to kind of share or like this, if this is something you feel comfortable with, I'd really appreciate it, because we're trying to get obviously as much shares and as likes as we can to do this. Any criticisms, constructive criticisms that you have, I would greatly appreciate it. Again, it's a learning experience for me, and the best job that I can do to partake the information to you will help. So anyways, we're at episode 5. I can't believe we've made it. Hopefully you've stuck with us, and I appreciate you joining us for this presentation. And we'll see you next week when we talk about testosterone and estrogen as it relates to weight loss. So until then, have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Thank you.